All right, welcome back. So we are going to get into the second page of the exam one review for Math 120. So we have for problem 5 another order of operations problem. So we just have to be careful and make sure we break it down using the order of operations. Now we have some clusters of grouping symbols. So we have square brackets and we have parentheses on the inside. So where we should start is always the most innermost operation we could possibly do. So in this case, if we look inside the brackets and inside the parentheses, we have 2 to the third power minus 10. So we would want to do that 2 to the third power first because exponents come before subtraction does. And now anything else we can do, we'd have to look outside of those brackets. So we do have a multiplication here separated from those brackets by subtraction, so we can do this multiplication as well. So we'll just box that. And so negative times negative better be positive, so we should get a positive 6. We have our subtraction, bring down the bracket, bring down the 5, bring down the parenthesis, 2 to the third power, be careful, 2 times 2 times 2 better be 8, minus 10. Now remember that little trick I said before, if you reverse it and it makes more sense because the first number is bigger, then chances are you can just change the sign. So 10 minus 8 is 2, so 8 minus 10 must be negative 2. So we can bring all this down now. And because the answer is negative, let's keep those parentheses around it because we want to separate it from the plus sign. And so now we can do the 5 plus negative 2 in the brackets. 6 comes down for the ride, and 5 plus a negative 2 is going to be a positive 3. So remember those rules. When the signs are different, we want to actually subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So in this case, it would be a positive 3. So because it's positive, we can lose those brackets. And 6 minus 3 is 3. Now keep in mind that not always are the answers going to be positive, so sometimes they might be negative, so just be careful. All right, let's break this last one down here. So we have some parentheses, so definitely got to do that. And then we also have a multiplication here, subtraction, and an addition. So we can also do this multiplication. As long as those boxes don't overlap, you're good. So 5 times a negative 6 would be a negative 30. Bring down the minus. 3 minus 8 is going to be a negative answer, negative 5. Still have the exponent. Now for this case, it's really tempting to want to take care of that double negative first, but you can't, because if you're taking care of a double negative, that's really taking care of subtraction. And you can't take care of subtraction before you take care of an exponent. That's the rules. So we have to do this exponent first. So ignore this negative outside the parentheses and just say negative 5 times negative 5, which is going to be positive 25. So we have the negative 30. We have the minus out in front. This whole thing changes to positive 25. And then we got the plus 12. So now we have a subtraction and an addition. What do we do first? Well, we don't want to do the addition first because subtraction is actually going to happen first because we have to go from left to right. So if we do this first, this is going to be the safer way to go. Now I didn't box this over here, but I guess I could have boxed it. So negative 30 minus 25. So you're at negative 30. Think of that number line. You're at negative 30 and you got to go back further into the hole, 25 more. So that's going to take you to negative 55 plus 12. And so now we have addition. So we have our rule. We want to subtract because they're different signs. And the larger one is negative, so our answer should be negative. So if we subtract those, it looks like we get 43. But we know it's negative. And that wraps up those order of operations ones. Now, the next one's a word problem, which are everybody's favorite. So let's take a look. The surface of the Dead Sea has an altitude of 1,299 feet, 1,299 feet below sea level. A pilot is flying 80 feet above that surface, above that low surface, below sea level. How much altitude must she gain to clear a 3,852 foot pass by 225 feet? Ugh. Well, it's hard to visualize it, so let's draw a picture. So we need sea level. All right, so sea level is going to be this dotted line here. So that is 0. Now, let's first start where the plane is. So we got the Dead Sea has an altitude 1299 feet below sea level. Now, this doesn't have to be to scale. So let's just say right here is 1299. And because it's below, let's throw a negative in front of it. Now, the plane is flying not at that level. It's flying actually 80 feet above it. So we have to go up 80 feet. And then we have our plane. There's our plane. So our plane is flying 80 feet above that. So the first question is where exactly is the height? If we know that 1299 below is here, what's 80 feet above that? You're getting closer to 0, so we should make this number smaller. It's still going to be negative though. What we can do is just subtract, right? If we subtract those, we're going to get 1219, but it should still be negative. So that's where the plane is flying, 1219 feet below sea level. Wow, crazy, right? But now we have this pass, this 3,852 foot pass. So again, this is not going to be to scale, but let's just say it's, does something like that. It's got to climb. Well, that's a pretty sharp climb, I know, but that's okay. So we want the plane to be, so this pass is 3,852 feet, but we want the plane to be above that by 225 feet. So again, we need a little pinch up here, and then the plane's going to be flying up here. So now the question is how high does the plane actually have to get to? We have to clear this by 225 feet, so if we add those, that should do it. So if we add those together, what do we get? Well, just because I want to be safe, let's get our handy dandy calculator out here. So 3852 plus the 225, 4077. So that's where the plane needs to get to. Okay, so we have a sense of where the plane's at and where the plane needs to get to. So how much altitude must she gain to get to that height? If this is where they're at right now, and this is where they want to be, how far of a gap is that? So we need the difference. How far apart are those? We need the difference. So if we said 4,077 minus a negative 1219, we can see what happens, right? We have our double negative here, so we're going to add those together. And if we do that, just to be safe, 1219, 5296. So 5296 feet. And again, don't forget those units. Anytime it's a word problem, there should be units. If there's units mentioned in there, make sure you consider putting units on your answer. Not all the time, but most of the time. All right, let's take a look at this last one from this page. So we just got to do some matching. So you got to make sure you remember your properties. Now remember, distributed property is the most specific because it's got two operations in there. It's got usually addition and subtraction and multiplication. Now, then you can see this first one only has multiplication, so it can't be the distributed property. Closure property is a special one too. Remember, that's usually just a wordy sentence. So that's not going to be it either. What about the associative property? Well, remember, associative property moves the grouping of numbers, and we can see that's what's happening here. So the parentheses are around the second two numbers, and then they shift to around the first two numbers. The order of the numbers stayed the same. That's also very important to this property. So this would be the associative property. Now the next one, we have 3 times x. So remember, if you have them squished together like that, that is multiplication. So 3 times x plus 3 times y equals 3 times x plus y. Now this has got 2 operations in it, so it's really a strong candidate for being the distributive property, and in fact, it is. So again, if we distribute the 3 into the parentheses, then we would see that we get the same thing that's on the left side of the equals. So this would be A. Now this one's kind of an interesting one because it can be confused. Because look at what happens. We have 8 times 1 equals 1 times 8. So they reversed the numbers. If you're moving numbers, that is a strong candidate for being the commutative property. You're moving stuff, so commuting. But look at the last part, equals 8. So the trick is that the 1 doesn't do anything to the problem. And when the 1 doesn't do anything to the problem, that is the identity property. So when you're using something to not affect any change, that's the identity. Now look at the next one. We got 7 plus 6 plus 9, 6 plus 9 in parentheses, 6 plus 9 in parentheses over here, plus 7. So numbers are moving. The parentheses didn't move. They stayed around the 6 plus 9. So that's key. They're trying to confuse you to saying it's the associative property. But in fact, numbers are moving. So that is the commutative one. All right, 2 more. 9 plus negative 9 equals negative 9 plus 9, which equals 0. Again, they're switching numbers around, which could be commutative, but because it equals 0, which is the additive identity, that would be the inverse property. So when you end up equaling an identity element, either 0 or 1, then chances are it's the inverse property. And last but not least, we have a sentence. And what did we say before? That's got to be the closure property. So that wraps up page 2, so stay tuned for page 3.